Can we talk about sketchbooks and sketchbook tour videos for a second? I can't be the only one that feels like shit watching artists go through these immaculate sketchbooks that are all final pieces with no mistakes. I'll let you know a little secret though. For every perfect sketchbook, there are about 4 or 5 really shitty ones. I actually just finished my YouTube sketchbook. It's the one I do all my film drawings in. So I figured, why not take you behind the scenes to see what my process looks like? Spoiler alert, it's mostly just a waste of pages, but I'll get into why that is. We'll also peek into my practice sketchbook, you know, the shitty one. Also, I promise you, after looking at my sketchbooks, you're gonna feel great about yourself. So for this sketchbook tour, I'm gonna be going through the YouTube one. This is the one that I've been using to record all my drawings so far, and also be throwing it to the practice one. This was the shitty one I was talking about before, which kind of holds all of my practice sketches before I take them to YouTube. This isn't the first sketch that was on my channel, but it's actually the second sketch. But I've practiced this one so many times, it's pretty crazy. This actually was taken from one of my favorite photos that I've taken in the Parkdale neighborhood of Toronto. I really wanted to capture the darkness because this photo was taken at night, so it's really tough. And also for a beginner urban sketcher, nighttime sketches are horrendously hard to do. But I wanted to capture the nighttime sky, but not make it too overbearing. And this one I practiced a lot. Let's go to the shitty one. And you can see, might have to skip through a little bit. I believe this was my first attempt at it. And you can see I went way too hard on these blues. But I actually like how the building itself, how the no-frills itself looks. This was before I started adding the people into it, but I had to add the people to give it a little bit of life. Let's see some other permutations of this. This was another one. I started to add people. I added all the people actually from the photograph. And as I went on, I decided to remove people and only keep the key ones. So I create this little triangle. Let's see what else. I drew this so many times, it's pretty crazy. Oh, here's another one where I was kind of playing around with the composition, adding a little bit more foreground and pulling away from the sky a little bit and making the shop pop out a little bit more. And then this one was the complete opposite, where I doubled down on nighttime to make the sky much, much darker just to see what it would look like. And then this one, actually, I believe is my favorite version of it. Even better than when I went over to this sketchbook to do the finals. Because I think the sky is nice and understated. The building is even understated, and there's a lot more emphasis placed on inside of the building. We only have 3 people there, which gives that nice little triangular composition. And I think in future sketches, I decided to up the amount of details that's inside the building itself. Yeah, so this is the first iteration where I decided to attempt to do a final sketch. This is the church one. I'll come back to this in a second only because I know for a fact there was another no frills one that I want to show you. And this one is it. Actually, there's another one after this. There has to be, right? Yeah, we'll talk about this one in a second. But this is the one that I actually made the final. So this is the one I scan in. This is the one I post on Instagram because I just love the way it came out. The sky, like I said before, it's understated. The birds are nice and like black and thick and they pop out. I paid a lot more attention to the details inside the building. I kept the 3 people. Overall, it was nice and understated, and I really like how it came out. But the reason I'll show you this one is because if you watch the YouTube video, this is the actual drawing that I did for that one. There was a point where I knew I messed up. The moment I added this blue right here, I knew I screwed this up because I meant to grab this blue here, but I ended up grabbing this one, and I was just like, oh, damn it. But other than that, I really actually dig how this one came up. So I added a little bit more detail in here. I took a lot more artistic liberty, added some more scribbles, some more signs, and overall I think it came out good. But I just think that this one here is the final, because I really dig how it came out. So let's go back to the beginning a little bit. So this church scene was actually the first video, and it took me so long to get this one right. How many of them do I have in this? I actually have 2 of them in this sketchbook. And I asked that question because I know I have a lot more in this one right here. But I have 2 of them. What I found really difficult was the trees in the foreground. I found it so hard to draw the trees. At the beginning, and I'll show you this right now, at the beginning, I paid a lot of attention to the details in the trees, trying to draw them out before I added the color. See, I believe this was the first one I did, where you can see the lines where I started to framing was a lot stronger. And then you can just see a lot of scribbles in here, and it just looks dark, looks muddy. You can't really see the details. I went in too hard with the red. I decided as I kept drawing it to step away from the red a little bit. This one, I tried to make my color work a little bit more gestural, but with the amount of detail still in there, it doesn't look great. I always loved how the church building and these background trees looked, and all of them actually. Even in this one, they're so understated. There's little hints of green, little hints of orange in the background. You can see the impression of the home, but this tree always pissed me off. It was such a challenge. And this one was actually my first favorite one, where I pulled back a lot from the reds and only started to add little impressions to reds. And so I made the tree mostly orange and yellow. But what annoyed me about this one, and the reason why I drew it 5-6 more times, is I went in a little bit too hard with the outline of the tree, and it just doesn't look great to me. This is another one where I took a lot of the lessons I learned from the previous orange and yellow one, and I decided to go only with a little bit of red. And it looks much better. It's a lot simpler, but I still think the red was too stark, and I didn't learn my lesson at this point where I just drew the outline of the tree. This one went super hard, add a little bit more impression, looks terrible. So let's go back here. So this is when I start to try to draw it using what I've learned. You can see there's still little details in the outline of the trees, but I don't even know what's going on in here. It looks like the scene's on fire. We'll talk about this one in a second because it's a very interesting story about this one. Actually, it's not that interesting. But by doing this scene, I understood how to draw leaves, and I took that into the church scene, which is on the next page here. So this was the version of the church that you guys saw in the sketch video. And as you can see, no longer did I add any of the outlines to the tree in the pen. I added the tree back here, but I just used the markers to layer the color and make it darker and darker every layer. So it gives the impression of 3D space. It gives the impression of a little bit of liveliness, and then you can clearly see the difference between the 2 trees. Whereas if you remember the previous versions, it's almost like I just dropped a bunch of orange and red on the page. But I even love how the other trees look, the little impression, the little bit of the condo, the church condo poking out there, and the other side of it just poking out. It's just so understated. It's so minimal. You can see the nice framing. I just really love how this came out. So this is actually my go-to now. As much as I liked the previous yellow one, let's find that. As much as I love this one here, with the impression of the reds, the little darker oranges with the yellow outline, I think this one just looks so much better because you can just see a clearer sense of space and depth. Let's go back to this one. So this sketch was actually the first one that I tested my YouTube channel with. Yeah, I never published this video because it just came out terrible. But this was the first one. I set up a camera, I set a timer, I tried to make an engaging video. I tried to capture the sounds of the markers hitting the paper, the pens, the scratches, and I tried to add a little bit of music, but the video came out so bad that I never published it. But I did learn so much. Like I said, I learned enough to do this sketch here, which was actually the first one I published on YouTube. So let's keep going. Passing through these no frills again. Oh, Dover Courthouse. I really love this one. I love how the bus came out in this one, and this one was actually the reason I started doing the after the sketch videos. I never filmed one for this one, but I found that whenever I finished a sketch, there was just so much work I would do the moment I turned off the camera. Like an hour later, 45 minutes later, I just come back to it, and there's so many things I found that I did not like. So I went back and I made those changes. In the original sketch of this one, the bus itself was blue, it was a lot darker. And then after I turned off the camera, I came back and I decided I hated how dark it was. So I went in with the Posca pen and just lightened it up a whole lot. And I think it came out great. This was another one where I practiced so much in my practice sketchbook. Well, not necessarily the scene, but I did practice drawing these cars. So I was drawing cars and vans for a little while. We'll come back to this one. Yeah, so this was kind of the first iteration of this, and I think this looks a lot better. You know, it's just so much pressure when you have the camera on that it doesn't really matter how much I practiced. I still found it difficult to implement what I've learned from the sketches. Filming is not really the best way to implement what you learn, because there's just so many external things. Like, you have a camera in your face, you can't properly look at your sketchbook because you have to put in an angle that looks great on camera, but not necessarily great for you to draw. Oh, this is what I meant before by mostly empty pages. Because of YouTube and the way markers work, you can see the markers go right through the page. And for some of them, and we'll see later on, it goes through a few pages. Right, and the beginning videos, you probably see in this one, this left-hand page was just so dirty. So I decided to start putting a piece of paper behind the sketches. That's why the ones after no fills aren't really as dirty, these pages here. But then I found that looked so terrible on video, so I decided to stop doing that and just embrace the fact that markers are gonna bleed. So this whole sketchbook is probably about, I'm not really sure, I'm gonna say 50 pages, but a lot of these pages are blank. I have 13, maybe 14 sketches in here in total. We'll come back to this one. So I actually drew this one well after I drew this one. That's why it's here. I would never film with such a dirty left-hand side page. And it'll be too distracting watching this, whatever's happening over here, watching the sketches go down. And then you just see all of whatever is over here. I find a lot of the scenes that I draw, since they're taken from photos that I've taken 2, maybe 3 years ago, a lot of this stuff is pre-pandemic. They look very different now. A lot of these places don't exist. This restaurant still exists. There's the Fat Pasha's and the DuPont Bassers area. This exists, but this is the side of the building, and this is completely different now. It's no longer gray. It's no longer ugly. They actually have a beautiful mural that I didn't realize till after I drew this, and I was walking by there and I saw it. It was actually really gorgeous. Let me flip back to a set for a second. This building here is still a supermarket, but I've gone through a few changes. So I took this photo in, I want to say 2018 or even before that, probably 2016, and I drew it. So it just goes to show how fast Toronto is changing. And it's kind of the genesis of the name of this channel, which is Future Condos, because I mean, let's face it, all of these buildings in 20 years are not going to exist. They're just going to be condos. But yeah, this is Fat Pasha's, and it's one of my favorite restaurants in the city. And it was just such a beautiful scene when I walked by. The red against the grays just really popped out. So I had to take the photo of it, and years later I drew it. But you can see this is one of those where I stopped putting the paper in the back, so the marker bleeds through obviously this page, but then the impression leaves through here. And if I'm lucky, which I wasn't lucky with this one, but usually I'm lucky and this page is clean, but this one, since it's not clean, I couldn't use this one to draw. So that's why this book is mostly just wasted pages. But now that I'm done with this for YouTube, I'll actually go back and use these blank pages, because since I don't have to film anymore, the pages don't need to look great for me to sketch on them. So this is a little bit of behind the scenes here. Usually I do sketches to understand the composition beforehand. And so this is me trying to understand the composition on a post-it note here. This was the first iteration where I made the lamppost a little bit too big. Everything was just a little bit too big in this one. So in this next iteration of it, I just decided to make everything a little bit smaller. And I think it fits in really nicely. I love the way the colors came out in this one. The impression of the trees in the background, the contrast from the light post and the building itself. And we can actually go back to this one. This was I want to say, I actually don't know when this was done. This would have probably been done before I started this. I think I might have gone from this sketch here to this one because I noticed this was a clean page. So I figured, why not just draw, especially if I was using a backing anyways. But I actually wish I kept going with this one. I think the reason I stopped was because of the lamppost. The lines were just way too loose, and I just lost a lot of detail. It was no longer impressionistic. It was mostly just scribble. It looked sloppy, really. But going back to this one, I love the way this one dried, and it just looks, I find it looks great. The amount of details here, I was learning how to do brickwork with the markers, add different textures in here. You can just see the shadows and the lights a little bit. Yeah, I really like this one. Let's see. And yeah, as you can see, it bleeds through and it continues bleeding. And then this one, it just went. I actually don't even know what's happening. This was like a 4-pager, it looks like. Oh no, this was the other one. This one and this one was the other one. So this was another sketch I did here where I was trying to understand the composition of the next buildings. And this was another one. On the other side, I actually drew it over here. This is one of my favorite ones. This photo that this sketch is based on is what started the whole future condos concept. It's because I would walk home from work in the winter and I would look across the street and I'd see these beautiful buildings. And with the way Toronto's going, I just figured, you know what, I should start documenting these. And the funny thing is, since this sketch is based on a photo that was taken in about 2016, this whole half side of this building does not exist anymore. This shop has changed. I don't even know what it is anymore. The coffee shop is still there, which is cool. But yeah, everything changes so quickly in the city. Okay, let's talk about this one. So this is the Waves building in downtown Toronto, and I really wanted to make this one work as a YouTube sketch. I went as far as to sketch it and film it, but I hated how this taxi came out. I really hated how this taxi came out. I love the building. I think that looks great. Hated how the taxi came out. The road was way too dark. No matter what I did, I just couldn't bring it back. It looked terrible. But this was one of the sketches that I practiced so many times. It's actually very early in this sketchbook here. Yeah, you can see it right here. Let me see if there's something before this. This was my first try at it, where before I added the taxi. It looks pretty cool. I dug it. This is when I was first learning, so I wasn't as loose as I am now, but I also wasn't as structured as I am now. This was just me experimenting, especially with colors. I was experimenting mostly with colors rather than how to render a building. You can see this one's a lot more conservative. The lines are a lot straighter. They're less loose. They're less whimsical. No taxi yet. And I think this was the first one I drew the taxi in, and I feel like I needed it because it just added something extra to look at, not just the Waves building, but it put the Waves building in context. And then the mailboxes, which were actually my favorite part of all of these sketches, is the mailboxes. But what I didn't really care for is the amount of detail that I did in this area. So let's see. This is another version of it where I toned down the amount of detail that I put on the outside. I shrunk everything to make everything seem a little bit more in context. This is the taxi again, adding a little bit more lines to make it a little bit more whimsical, but the road is just too dark. The blues are too heavy. Mailboxes, still brilliant, love them. So I figured since I'm not getting the taxi right, I might as well just start sketching those by themselves and just practicing it. Make them loose, whimsical, but also tell that it is a car to tell that it is a taxi. You can see another one over here. I really like how this one came out. But yeah, all to show that, going back to what I said before, it doesn't matter how many times you practice. The act of just filming this for YouTube, the angles are so weird that as much as I love how this came out, there's no way I could have reproduced it for this sketch. The pressures are just very different. I drew this one in the living room, very comfortable. This one, I have lights everywhere. I have a microphone. I have a camera staring straight down at me. I have a very small area to work in. So I just couldn't recreate it. So maybe in the future, you'll see a video of this where I get better and I do it again. I'll do another attempt at it. Another bunch of empty spaces. Oh, there's another one that I really love. This is a restaurant downtown that I used to when I was on the streetcar going to work, I'd always used to see it. And in the area that it's in, it's very dark. It's very gray, it's very boring. But this was a pop of color. But yeah, I really love these little things here. I don't even know what to call them. And since I believe this was yes, there's a snow down here, so this is a winter evening photograph. You just see like the nice little speckles of light that's happening in the interior. There's a little bit of snow everywhere. It's garbage day, that's why everything's out here. Moving on. Oh, there's another little behind the scenes here. So a little while back, I started to do the after the sketches, essentially after the Dover Courthouse sketch, because like I mentioned before with the van, I did a lot of work afterwards. And actually, if you look at the impression, you can see how dark it is. You can see a lot more blues. You can see darker grays, right? Which you don't really see in this one. So I figured, let me start filming that, because I think that is a part of the process too. Even outside of sketching, illustration, in my design work that I do day to day, a work is never really finished, and you'll always find something afterwards that you want to change. So whenever I turn off the camera, I wait a little bit, maybe 45 minutes and an hour, and then I take a little bit of notes to understand what I want to address. And this is what I use to kind of frame the after the sketch videos. Oh, I didn't even talk about this. Yeah, this is a tailor shop. I wasn't really keen with this one. I think this one, if you watch the video, you would hear me say that this was a sketch that made me question everything. I questioned what I was doing, why I was even doing this, because it came out so terrible. But after the sketch, I added so many more details. I added a lot more contrast. I added this rust area here, and I came back to life, so I kind of felt good again. Rose Emporium. Yeah, here's another behind the scenes. I did the initial sketch here, where I was trying to understand the compositions, and then these are my notes for after the sketch. So a lot of these now, I don't have versions in the shitty sketchbook, because I just drew them for the first time on camera, which is kind of cool. So I believe anyone that you see post it with the initial sketch and the initial impression of me trying to get a sense of the composition, that means I drew it for the first time on camera. I think that's pretty fun, because it's kind of scary, because I still don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just drawing and hoping for the best. But also, I love how this came out. And you saw in the after the sketch, I went in and I darkened a lot of the greens here. I darkened a lot of the grays here. So it really added a sense of contrast. And it really, everything just pops up more. I love how this rose came out. I love the impression of the lights going on there. I love how gritty upstairs looks. You can see there's a difference between what's happening upstairs and like the storefront from downstairs. Olivia's Garden, this is another one. This is the first one. No, that's a lie. I drew people in the No Frills one. But I guess this is the first one where the people are a major focus of the sketch. You can see once again, this was a first attempt on camera, so I have the composition sketched out here roughly. You can see it's kind of breaking out there. And the final sketch, I just shifted that up a little bit, so now you can see the sidewalk. And yeah, I needed to add texture. These are my after the sketch notes. I need to add texture, add contrast, of course, add contrast, always add contrast. Darken the areas and shadows, another word for adding contrast. Popping the people out, adding contrast, and then Posca, add the whites, which is also adding contrast. And then this is the final one I've done. And you can see, I think my pen wasn't working here, that's why you see all these scribbles. You can see me writing my name here. But yeah, you can see also the composition that I do before drawing it. I drew this for the first time. And then once again, the notes, add shadows, of course, add contrast. Add more shadows to shadow area. I don't even know what that means. Add Posca to bring back highlights, of course, and then rework upstairs. All different words for adding more contrast. But yeah, love how this one came out after the sketch. Also, when I finished it the first time, it just came out way too flat, way too flat. But then I went in, I added grays here to add a little vignette around the window, so it made the laundry machines pop. It made what's happening in here pop out a little bit more. I darkened a lot of areas here, so no longer did it look like this area and then this area were on the same plane. This is a little bit further back in space. And you can see that now with the darkness there. You can see the impression of the awning with the shadows there too. And then you have obviously you have the highlights there. Really cool building, really cool building. And I think that's it. Yeah, that's the end of the book. And like I said, there's only about 12, 13 sketches in here, whereas the book probably has about 50 pages, but that's just what a drawing for YouTube looks like. And now that I've finished the sketchbook for the channel, I'm actually gonna go back in and fill up those pages, because why waste all of them, right? See, didn't I tell you you'll feel good about your sketchbooks after seeing mine? Now that I'm done with my YouTube one, I'll need to buy something that better fits my needs. What sketchbooks are you guys using? Do they hold up to markers? By the time this video is out, I'll already have bought a new one, but I'm still genuinely curious about what you're using. I may pick up one of your suggestions for the future. I had a really great time making this video. What are your thoughts? If you enjoy it, let me know in the comments. If you didn't, it's probably because you have an amazingly perfect sketchbook. Either way, like, subscribe, watch the videos that are popping up now.